That okay wasn't the meeting start. It's going to start now. Okay, I call this meeting to order. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. I want to start out a little bit with some trivia, and then we're going to get into some of the meat. So, did you know...
Before we start, do you have an off-road sheet?
Oh, yes I do.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Should I do the mallet again?
Yes.
Okay. So, did you know that the human body, when you count up all the cells in the body, it's made up about 10% of what we would think of as human being cells. 10%. So that's 90% of something completely different. Does anybody know what it is?
Bacteria.
Bacteria. Yes, it's from Jag, who's here for the first time tonight, but already contributing. 90% of the cells in the human body are made up of bacteria, which means that it's totally different DNA, totally different function. It's something that you don't really think of, right? Also, even in the individual human cell, you have mitochondria, right? Everyone know what mitochondria is, or maybe this is bringing back traumatic memories of biology, where all you really had to do
where the force
was...
comes from.
Yeah. I think it's the only one I remember. Mitochondria also has its own cells, its own DNA. It's this little creature that's working within all of us, within all of our cells, making sure that we're able to walk and talk and, see and do all those other things that human beings can do. So what's my point? When we think about what a human being is and what the individual things are inside of us that help us to function, we're really not just the brain. We're really not just, it's not just you, it's everything else that's inside of you that's working to be able to make you do what you do and be who you are. And easy little analogy here, it's the same if we're a bank or if we're an organization. It's the individual members that really contribute and as a whole make that bank or organization something more than just a bank or a club, and it makes it the collective group that is enabling it to serve its purpose. And so part of this is I just want to say thank you to everyone who's here tonight for showing up, and for if you're performing a role and you agreed to do the role ahead of time, thank you. Thank you for committing and following through on your commitment. If you agreed to take and assume a role tonight, thank you for contributing as well. It helps us to have a good meeting. And if we didn't have any speakers at all tonight, it would put a lot of pressure on Lu Ching. So thank you for volunteering. Okay, so let's go over the rules. And what I'm going to ask, we're not going to do it now, but when you come up, I'd like you to just spend 30 seconds talking about what you contribute, not to the Toastmasters group, but what is it about you that makes this organization, First Republic, a little better at doing what it needs to do. And I'll start once I go through the rules. So I'm the Toastmaster. My job is to basically be the MC of the meeting, to sort of set the tone and introduce the speakers. Stephanie Louie is the word of the day. She's going to give us some vocab skills, introduce us to a word that we may not know. Then Matt Lau in the back is going to do the manual tip. The manual tip is like a life pro tip on Reddit, if you're familiar with that. It's like, use Control-Shift-V to paste without formatting, or don't say my assumption was, say my understanding was. It just comes across a little better. Matt's going to give us something in a little more detail, but sort of along those lines, I think. Speaker number 1 is going to be Tony Woodall. Tony Woodall has kindly volunteered, and he's going to really put in an effort to maybe even go over a minute or two of the standard time in order to take some of that pressure off the chin. We're all going to contribute a written evaluation to Tony's speech. This gives him some crowdsourced feedback on how he did. And then Alyssa is going to stand up and give him a targeted review that allows her to sort of put it out in front of everyone, practice her own skills as a reviewer and as a critic, and give Tony some constructive criticism and tell him what he did well. After Alyssa, we're going to have the Tabletopics, where Lu Ching is going to be under no pressure to ask us a ton of good questions that get everyone engaged to come up and keep their adrenaline flowing by thinking off the top of their head on their feet. Then we're going to move into the evaluation segment. The evaluation segment is an important part of the Toastmasters meeting because it sets a little bit of the formality. It's part of what holds the organization together, really, if you think about it. We're not just getting together to speak and make jokes and try to come up with interesting table topics. No pressure, Lu Ching.
No pressure.
The evaluation segment is going to be led by Christine Berger. And Christine's going to tell us how we did generally. She's going to also walk us through the sort of the metrics. She's going to have Jawa give us our timing. Stephanie's going to tell us how we did on that word of the day that she introduced. Sharon's going to tell us how many times we said and and those other words that we're not supposed to say. And then I'm going to adjourn with the closing comments and wrap it up, and we're all going to go home. We're back to work.
Oh, no.
So with that said, let's turn things over to Stephanie for the word of the day. And remember, Stephanie, we're going to kick things off by saying, one thing the bank does better because you're here. And I forgot that I was supposed to do that. So apologies, I'll do this super quickly. The bank is better at letting its customers take trips to Cuba because I'm able to give them the requirements for what they can and can't do. Stephanie, on you. No pressure.
So I don't know if you guys know, but I am the intern for internal audit. And what I think I do that makes the bank better is I provide you guys with better auditors, with happy auditors, so they can audit all of you. Nice. Aside from audit duties, I'm also in charge of the kitchen, the supply room, and pretty much all the administrative stuff. And without me, the whole audit department would just be blah. So the word I chose today is mellifluous. I don't know if any of you heard of it, but what inspired me to choose this word today, I was listening to some really nice classical music, and I thought it sounded so lovely. And the definition to this is a pleasant flowing or soothing sound, sweetened with or as if with honey. And so this word is usually associated with sound or someone's voice, and it comes from the Latin word mel, which means honey, and fleur, to flow. And the example I have is, the mellifluous sound of the clarinet lulled me into a state of relaxation. So it can be used to describe, it's usually used to describe a musical instrument, or as I said, someone's voice. So for that, an example is, her voice was so mellifluous that I was in paradise whenever she talked. So, mellifluous. I'm just curious, who's the timer?
It's me.
Oh, okay. I didn't see the cards, so.
Oh. No, actually you are on time. So. But it's, yes.
I was just like, oh, so I'll be taking them. Just talk and stand for all night.
Thank you, Stephanie. It was almost a poetic explanation for the word, so it's a good one. Flowing honey.
Yes.
It's like a name of like an '80s glam band. So with no further ado, let's have with a little bit of further ado. Sorry, Tony. Before we get on to the further adoing, Matt Lau is going to come up and give the manual tip.
So how do I make the bank better? harder than Tabletopics. I am active on Collaborate, and I know the bank is pushing for Collaborate to be the next thing, so I try to lead people to be active on Collaborate. And so the manual tip of the day is how to keep your anxiety from coming out right before a speech. And this is almost like a life pro tip because it works for a lot of stuff. And basically it is 3 simple steps. There's more, but these are 3 really simple ones. And it's just sleep better, eat better, and drink better. And then I'll do some explain like I'm 5 on all 3. And so sleep better. So if you normally sleep at 12, try to sleep an hour earlier at like 11. For a meal, you don't want to be too full. So for lunch, if my meal is like a Big Mac, a fries, and like 10 chicken McNugget, just cut it down to say I'm a chicken. And then for drinking, sometimes you like to be hydrated. So I see Kevin does this a lot. Bring the water with you, like right before you speak or something. Yeah, that's my manual tip.
Thank you, Matt. I think those were 3 very good tips. I like the explain like I'm 5 reference. Keep the Reddit theme going. If anyone doesn't know what that is, they're going to have to go after this meeting and look that up. Because, man, it's no better way to waste time at work. I'd like to bring Tony up to the podium for his speech.
I make FRB better by being the OnBase product manager. OnBase is our electronic content management solution, and our goal is to eliminate as much paper as we can, and at least the paper that we create in most cases, and utilize workflow automation and efficiency tools within OnBase and other workflow systems that we have within the bank.
I'm expecting it.
I'm trying to think of how to use mellifluous. Hopefully, I am from the South, and I often think that those Southerners that have a wonderful Southern voice are very mellifluous with their speaking because it is a very lilting, and I can't do it today, but they're very mellifluous in their speaking. The title of my speech today is How Defending Against Multiple Attackers Has Prepared Me for Life. My first trip to San Francisco was to attend a Taikai. It's a Japanese martial arts convention that I attended back in the 80s. And I got the opportunity to train with and meet the Grandmaster of the martial art that I studied. One of the most interesting things that I did in my studies of martial arts was learning to defend against multiple attackers. Hopefully we'll never have to do that, but it does come in handy. Not just in fighting in a martial arts scenario, but also in life. It teaches us a lot of things. This is my Grandmaster. This was after the visit here about, this was in 94, I believe. I was much younger. This was at the presentation when I earned my 5th degree black belt in that art that week from my instructor there. Hatsumi Sensei is a very good teacher. He's now about 26. He's going younger in years. He sports a long purple hair these days, and he wears it well. I'm not going to tell him he doesn't, because he's already thrown me around many times. But that being said, I'm also going to, this is way back Wednesday apparently. This is a picture of me working on a friend of mine's neck. And I don't know if any of you remember one of my earlier speeches I think my icebreaker, I talked about a doctor, one of my fellow students that became a pain medicine specialist. That's him, Crawford Barnett's now a pain doctor. You can thank me for it. He gave much more than I gave him, believe me. Multiple attackers, when we fight in the martial arts, we want to learn how to defend against everything that we need to, because it helps us be prepared for what we're going to need to do. Now I want you to imagine that you have multiple attackers, and I don't have weapons here, so we'll pretend that, you know, and visualize. This is a chance for you to visualize that I've got one attacker over here, Aaron, with a club, and then I've got another one over here with a knife, and, you know, maybe another one that's unarmed getting ready to attack me. I've got 3 attackers coming at me at one time, and that's kind of the way life is. We have a lot of things going on, whether it's doing project management, working on goals, managing children, whatever it is, you have a lot of different things in your life that you have to be aware of and that you have to pay attention to. So if I've got these attackers that are ready to, you know, take me on and do what they want to do, there are certain things that I have to think about in this fight. The first thing I have to do is understand the main goal that I have in that encounter. Typically in a fight scenario, my main goal is to win, is to go home to my family, to myself, to survive that altercation. One of the things that we learned is that there is no winner in a fight. One of the things that we're taught, if at all possible, our main goal in most altercations, if we can, is to escape, to get away. So right now, and in most situations, if you have the opportunity and you don't have the ability to confront a particular situation at a given time, what you need to do is look at the best escape alternative you have and run and get away. Now, this is not a self-defense class, but that is one of the first things that I teach. If you can get away, you need to get away. There's no point in you fighting somebody if you don't need to, because there are no winners in a fight. But the main thing that I want to express in that, when you're fighting or defending against multiple attackers, is you have to be aware of everything around you and of all your surroundings. I cannot just focus on one thing. I can't sit here just because he's got a club. I can't start focusing on him, because what's going to happen? Elaine is going to come up from behind with a knife, okay? And I'm going to be dead. But again, that's just like life. I can't focus on one thing at a time, whether I'm doing project management, whether I'm doing business analysis, whether I'm working on goals or watching kids. I can't just watch one, because believe me, if you have children, the other one will go running off in the other direction. So you have to be able to pay attention and be alert to everything around you. The other thing that teaches you when you're working against multiple attackers is that, number one, you have to analyze your situation. What am I going to do? You have to watch all of your opponents. You have to be aware, but you have to act. You have to do something. You can't sit there. This isn't a boxing match where you have 15 rounds of hopping around, you know, going around there. Pretty soon, one of you is going to get tired, and since there are 3 of them, or more than one of you, odds are it's going to be you. So you have to analyze your situation, analyze it fast, figure out what you're going to do, and do it. Just like goals, you have to have a goal, you have to set an action plan, and you have to do it. The other thing you have to be aware of when you're fighting multiple attackers, and that you should do in life, is use your assets. Now, if I'm fighting somebody with a knife, my biggest asset is what? Anybody got an idea?
Speed?
Nope, not speed.
Their momentum.
Nope, not their momentum.
Bees.
Bees! No. Distance. When I'm fighting somebody against a knife, they can't hurt me with that knife if I'm standing over here. So my biggest asset is distance when I'm fighting somebody like that. Another thing is I have other, getting into weapons, I have tools. I want to make sure that I have something that can keep somebody far away from me if I need to. I'm not getting undressed. Don't get excited. But you have weapons. So just like in a fight, if you're fighting multiple attackers, you want to be able to use what your assets are, whether it's if you've got a jacket, you've got a weapon of some sort, you've got a belt. I can defend very handily with a belt, believe it or not, in a true fight. All right? But the point is, look at what you have on your assets. You know, what skills you have, what things you can do. You know, there's a lot of things that you can do. Distance is one of your biggest assets in a fight, by the way. It will help you win many. The other thing that you learn when you're fighting multiple attackers is to choose the hard one or the closest one. Again, if the guy's unarmed and they're over there, I don't really have to worry about them first. You know, the other thing I have to do is focus on the hardest or the first to find out which one will meet my objective or be the easiest for me to get to my objective. If my objective is to escape or to reach my goal, what is the one thing that I need to do that will help me further my goal? What action do I need to take will get me to the point that I need to get to? If that is to escape, then I want to make sure that I take out the closest one to the door so I can get to that door. Okay? So having multiple attackers teaches you not just how to fight, but also what to do in life, how to approach life, whether it be goals, projects, anything that you have. Think of it like multiple attackers. Be aware of your surroundings, analyze and act, use your assets, and the most important one is understand your main goal. And most of you that have heard me talk about goal setting and goal achievement, knowing your why. Why do I want to win, or why am I doing what I'm doing? Because that's what's going to keep me alive in a fight, knowing what I need to go home to, or you know what I'm trying to accomplish in life. So know your why, know the main goal, because that will keep you alive in life and in fights. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Let's give Tony an extra round of applause, not just to give him time to get dressed, but for stepping up literally at the last minute. Okay, so first of all, I'm the one who's going to be blocking the door, so if you're called on and you don't want to go, you're going to have to make your way through me. If you weren't listening to Tony too closely, except when he was talking about escaping, because that's sort of my technique at work when I'm getting too many emails. So, Stephanie, if you're sending me an audit message and I don't respond, you can just blame Tony. Okay, let's all take a couple of minutes and do a written evaluation of Tony's speech. Okay, please take about another minute to wrap things up. Okay, pens down. No, just kidding, if needed. That's fine. Let's welcome Melissa up to the podium to review Tony's speech.
How I made First Republic a better place. I work in marketing now, so a lot of my job involves directly helping the bankers and the relationship managers. So oftentimes they'll come to marketing and ask for certain communications and help sending out letters to their clients and prospects. So sometimes I have to handhold a lot of the RMs because they don't really work with Excel a lot, so I'll kind of go the extra mile and clean up their database for them and teach them how to communicate with their prospects and clients, which really helps them out so they can get the sales that they need. Tony, first of all, thank you so much for stepping up and speaking basically on the fly. I know it's a really difficult thing for the Toastmaster when you find out that both of your speakers the day of are canceling on you. It's definitely, again, highly discouraged, and it's best if we can give a little bit of a heads up, just because the speaking role, as most of you know, takes more preparation than what Tony can do in a couple of hours. So thank you again, Tony, for that. I thought that your speech topic was extremely captivating. I'm always interested in how to defend myself in case 3 people run up to me with knives. This topic was really practical because things like this can happen. You're in the street and you find yourself in a compromising situation. It's good to know some tactics. I also thought it was great that you brought your visuals and pictures. It's fun to see Tony back in 1994 with his mustache. Never imagined what you'd look like back then. It's great to see that. It added a lot of color that you were able to describe some of the people that were in your class with you. It was fun to hear all the descriptors. It really brought a lot of color to your presentation. Bless you, Kevin. And I also thought it was great when you involved the audience. You gave Aaron and Alina some things to play with. It really gets your audience engaged, and it makes them more inclined to listen to your speech. If you ever, some topics you could ask them are like, it's great to involve your audience because it helps them basically wake up. Sometimes people kind of like zone off, but if you call them out like, Monica, hi, how are you doing? They're more likely to be like, oh crap, I hope she doesn't call me again. I'm going to pay attention more this time. Some areas of improvement. I thought that I'm used to your usual structure of your speech where you introduce your points in the beginning, and I was kind of hoping for that. You did wrap up nicely, stating your main points again, but I got a little bit lost in the beginning and the middle. I wasn't sure what your points were until you got into them. So it's helpful if in the beginning you display what you'll be talking about tonight so we can follow along. Also, I noticed that sometimes you tend to run out of time. You get into the meat of your topic towards the green light, and I think maybe you can be a little bit more conscientious of the time. Overall, the best part of your speech was your vocal variety. You started off very mellifluous, and then towards the end you built up the excitement and you really brought the audience together and really made us excited about learning how to defend ourselves. So thank you again, Tony, for presenting tonight.
And now for the part of the evening that you've all been nervous about. Lu Ching is going to come up and take us through the table topics. Lu Ching, you have to say why the bank is better because you're here, but I think in the interest of time and getting as many people to do table topics as possible, we can cut out the requirement for the individual speakers, unless you have just been thinking this entire time about what you're going to say and you really want to share.
I make the bank better because I make the investors happy. I work in investor reporting, so I make sure our institutional investors
I proved to them that we are a good service, or we service our loans well. So all the money keeps flowing in. We can make more loans and keep generating revenue. Now, table topics. Today we're gonna add something different from what we have been doing. So I went to a workshop about telling stories for startups. Why startups need to have good stories? Because they need to attract investors. So the instructor told a very good framework or structure to tell stories that make the story become compelling. And it's not only useful for startups and also useful for all of us, because there are times that we need to convince somebody that we have a good idea, or maybe you need to convince your boss that you need to start a project and that project makes sense and it's a valuable project. So things like that. Now, before I introduce what it is, I would like to ask some questions. Who thinks you're good at telling stories? Who's good at telling stories? Raise hand. Who's not good at telling stories?
Not good enough.
Okay, now, Angie, would you come up?
Sure.
And Jack?
Jag, yes.
Please come up here and we're not gonna fight, but you'll help me create a story. And so, once upon a time. Ladies first.
Okay.
Through the back.
Let's see. Once upon a time, there was a small dog.
Okay, there was a small dog. Every day. Jack.
Every day, the dog dressed up as Batman.
Now, until one day.
Until one day, he'd rather dress up as Superman.
There's a movie coming out.
Because of that. Because of that.
He got shipped to Mars.
Then because of that.
Because of that, he started wearing alien gear.
Now, then because of that, one more.
Then because of that, I adopted him.
Adopted an alien?
Adopted the dog. Yeah, the alien dog.
Alien dog.
Alien dog.
Adopted him.
Okay. Until finally.
Until finally, he wanted to come back to Earth.
Come back to Earth.
Return to Earth.
Now every day.
Now every day we drink tea on the terrace.
What's the moral of the story? Audience, anyone?
Dogs like tea.
And there's no one.
It's
Right.
Elon Musk's
Answer.
dog.
Yeah.
And more? Or Earth is a good place.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we have this framework. Once upon a time, it's a setup of the story. It tell us what it was before, and now every day is what we were doing before. Until one day there's an inciting incident that caused the changes. So the dog went to dress up as a Superman, and because of that, there may be some struggles makes the dog have to take some action. So he doesn't like Superman, then he went to Mars. Because of that, he was adopted and everything happened Now every day is what it's now. So the structure of the story is the story goes like it was. This is what it was. Then an inciting story happens. Then you have a challenge, and then you take an action. And now this is what it's now. So when you tell a story in this structure, it delivers to the audience why the morale is important and why you delivered something. So now let's have an exercise. I will give an example first. So once upon a time, there are two good friends. They live in a condo in San Francisco, and every day they struggle with paying their rent. Until one day their landlord is trying to ask them to leave. Because of that, they try to figure out a way to pay the rent, so they rented out their living room to 3 guests. They provided airbed and provided breakfast. Then because of that, they paid the rent for that month. Until finally, they decided to start a website called Airbnb. Now every day, people who cannot pay their rent or have extra space use that website to provide lodging to people who are trying to save money to pay the rent or mortgage. The moral of the story is Airbnb is a website that should exist to help people or something else. So that's an example. Now, it's your turn.
Nice.
So, it is year 2515, a long time since the internet completely replaced newspaper. A startup called Street Journal World selling newspapers made a biggest IPO in history. Tell us why it was so successful. Anyone raise hand? Christine?
We're not using this framework.
Oh yes, I forgot to mention, yes, we're using this framework, but you don't have to use everything there.
Okay. So once upon a time, people read newspapers and read magazines that were made out of trees. Every day trees were getting cut down and the Amazon forest was getting decimated. Because of that, all the lemurs died. Because of that, carbon dioxide completely filled up the atmosphere. And then because of that, we all decided we needed to make a change. And until finally, some entrepreneuring young people decided they're going to use their intelligence for technology to really take reading to the next level and make it purely electronic. Now, every day in this new era, 2025 or whatever it is, virtually no books or no trees are cut down, and the Amazon rainforest has been completely replenished. And the moral of the story, sometimes it takes the brink of disaster for humans to engineer and make positive changes.
Now, why we need iWatch when we already have our watch and the iPhone? Anyone raise their hand? Chi-Chi?
Did I raise mine?
You did.
Using that formula, okay. All right. So why do we need the iWatch when we have your normal watch and an iPhone? Well, once upon a time, people didn't have watches, and someone realized it would be good to have a device that they could carry with them to be able to tell time, instead of being able to rely on the sun and the sundial. And every day, this person thought this would be a good idea. So as a result, many years later, a watch was developed, and people wore watches and they found that they were useful for having time on your hand, and you could, you didn't need to be dependent on the sun, and when the sun wasn't out, you still know what time it was. Fast forward to today, so we have watches, but since we like to make things more convenient and miniaturize them even more, someone came up with a good idea of having naturally a more advanced watch, which would be the iWatch. So not only will this timepiece tell your time, but you can also talk into it, you can check the weather, and you can do any number of things that you can do on your phone now into your watch. So as a result, now we have iWatches because that's the next step in the evolution of watches. And as for the moral, I think the moral is that people always want to take what they have and just make it better. It's just kind of the drive. So.
The next question is, if you are starting a new business, what service or product will you choose and why? Monica.
Once upon a time, there were stories about businesses. No, just kidding. Okay. Once upon a time, the reason I'm struggling with this, just for context, is I actually have several business ideas that right now I cannot think of, and it's driving me insane. So I'm just gonna roll with it. Okay. Once upon a time, you know, there's a lot of bikers in the East Bay where I live, and you trudge all the way up that hill, and they go really early in the morning, and you know, every time that they do this, they're all the way up in the top of the hill. They probably haven't had breakfast or coffee yet, and I think the biggest opportunity then is to serve them breakfast burritos and coffee at the top of the hill, right by the most beautiful regional parks up there, because that's where I live and they're gorgeous, but they don't have breakfast burritos and coffee, which is what I would want. So one day I bought myself a huge taco truck and I renovated it so that it now serves burritos and it serves Pete's or Phil's coffee. I haven't really decided yet. Because of that, every single starving biker now is, I have a huge line of starving bikers once they get up the hill, because once you get up the hill you really don't have to do anything to go down, so it's perfect. You know, your whole recovery is now recovery and digestion. So because of that, we have tons of happy cyclists. Everybody starts moving to the East Bay, which makes my property values go sky high, which is awesome. Because of that, I not only have a thriving business, which I start to replicate across the highly coveted areas for bikers like La Honda. I'm sure there's bikers up in Mount Tam and other cool areas. So I start going public. And because of that, I'm going to make a lot of money. Every day now, I enjoy my burritos and coffee. And the moral of the story is, if you see a problem or a opportunity, grab it, seize it, make it your own, and make some money out of it.
Last question. Sharon.
Yes.
Tell us something that you invented and why you invented.
Okay.
Once upon a time, there was a dog named Tigger, and Tigger stayed home all day by himself while his mommy went to work. Tigger, every day, Tigger is fenced into the kitchen. He's got a good area where he can walk around, and he also has a little cage with his bed where he can sleep, and a little pad where he goes to pee. Tigger doesn't like to stay at home very long by himself, so when mommy's gone too long, he on purpose will miss his little pad and pee on the floor. Because of that, his mommy, whoever she is, spends a lot of time on her hands and knees scrubbing the floor. Because of that, her knees are raw and her hands are raw. Because of that, she constantly has to buy cleaning supplies and clean up the mess before the landlord finds out and kicks them both out of the house. Then because of that, she, the mommy, has asked her brother, Tigger's uncle, to come by once a day when he can and let Tigger out.
I don't think I invented anything though. Until finally one day, she invented a robot and let her brother off the hook. And this robot feeds and walks Tigger 2 times a day while she has to work. So now every day, Tigger does his business outside of the house and only sleeps in the kitchen. So the moral of the story is, don't leave your dog at home all day by himself, and invent a robot that can help you with your dog. Thank you. Back to the Toastmasters idea. No, it doesn't do that. Robot dog. Robot dog.
Thank you, Luching. That was a very that was a multi-part table topic. So I think that we can all agree that Luching did a great job keeping us all entertained, making us think on our feet. And before we move on to the next section, wait a second, we have a few minutes left. Table topics is something that usually is an individual thing. You're all sort of thinking, am I going to get called for table topics?
Oh, yeah.
So we're gonna take a couple of minutes and do something that I don't think has ever been done before. And every single person here is going to participate in impromptu table topics. How is this going to happen? Sort of playing off of what Luching did, we're going to go around and you're going to make up a story. And the only catch is everyone gets 1 word. So the challenge is, let's go around the table as quickly as we can. We're going to start with Sharon, go around the table, and then go to the outer row. So inner row, outer row, start on this side. And how quickly can we get to the end? I'm going to kick us off by giving us the introductory word. You get 1 word, next person,
And
as
we're
fast
supposed to
as
end
you
the
can.
story by the last person? Or?
And Alina, you have the honor of not being the reviewer number 2 tonight. Instead, you get to end the story because you're going to be the last person. It doesn't have to make grammatical sense. Since we can't really guarantee that. Okay, so first word, no.
Rainbows.
Can't ever
Talk.
Fly. Show up.
2. School.
Sucks.
Hard.
What did you say? However, we like school.
And that concludes the most anti-mellifluous speech ever.
You guys did all a great job, but I think we can step up our game a little bit. Now that we've done 1 run through, let's speed things up. Next word, here we go. Please.
Let's do opposite.
Should we do opposite this time? Okay. Then in that case, we'll start with you. Please.
Mother.
Bake.
Me.
4.
Cookie.
With
Sugar.
and peanuts.
Alright, which
On a
Brownies.
diet.
on a diet? Atkins diet. Because basketball doesn't go well with cookies. Yeah, I think 2 minutes is better.
Okay, very well done. We'll spare everyone a 3rd round. So next, Christine Berger is going to come up and do the general evaluation.
That was really nice. That's very strange. So this is my first time doing a general evaluation. For those that are new or visitors, I'm going to kind of give an overall evaluation of the Toastmaster, how the table topics went, the evaluators. I won't evaluate Tony because Alyssa has already done that. And we'll also give folks that helped with some other pieces like Jawa, Stephanie, and Sharon to talk about, to go over their pieces. So Jawa, can you quickly do the timer report, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think most of them, they were all within the time limit, except Tony, but I can understand because it was not a prepared speech. He prepared at the last minute. Okay, so he went overboard by, instead of 6 minutes, he took 9 minutes. So that's rest of the folks like Stephanie, she took 1 minute 31 seconds. Matt took 1 minute 20 seconds. Alicia, she took 2 minutes 56 seconds. Luching, anyway, I don't need to worry about your time. So when it comes to table topics, Christine, she took 1 minute 15 seconds. Chi, she took 1 minute 30 seconds. Jack, 2 minutes 30 seconds. Monica, 1 minute 44 seconds. And Sharon, 1 minute 43 seconds.
And our grammarian Stephanie, do you want to report on usage of your word today?
Yeah, sure. So the word mellifluous was used 4 times today. Tony used it the most. He used it 2 times. Alyssa used it once, and Alina used it once as well, which you know I was pretty happy about because it's a hard word to use, especially if the topic is not very mellifluous.
And Sharon, do you want to share our all-counter report?
Yeah. Looks like we, especially me, are guilty of the ums and the ahs most, and if you wanted to see the rest of it, details, I'll leave it up on the podium, but that's kind of what we are.
Okay, sounds good.
Lots of ums, lots of ahs.
So I really enjoyed today's meeting. I think there was really good energy. I think it helped that we kind of did something different with table topics. It was just nice to mix it up and try something new. I really liked how Erin started the meeting with the interesting factoid, with the analogy of the body, and you know, bringing it home with we at First Republic are all like areas of the body. I actually am a biology major, so I know what you're talking about when you brought up the mitochondria. So very props for me over there. I think one of the things that I really appreciated that you did is you thanked all of us for showing up. And I think that's one of the things that makes this Toastmasters such an enjoyable club, is that I think we all appreciate each other, and I think it was nice of you to bring that home. I also liked how you did a very detailed explanation of the roles. I think for those of you that may have been here for a long time, you may forget that for those of us that are new, or maybe for some guests, this it helps to kind of hear these things over and over again, so I appreciated that. And I also thought your segues were pretty mellifluous. I could tell you were really listening. When you had talked about Stephanie later on in the meeting, you had brought up her work in internal audit, and especially as you were listening to Tony, so I appreciated that. And in terms of Alyssa as an evaluator, I was actually watching how you took notes, and I don't know if that's like an actual form or something, but I liked how you were very organized, and I can tell you were really wanted to make sure you gave constructive feedback to Tony, which I think you did, and it all made sense. I liked how you started with thanking him and you ended with thanking him, which was a nice sandwich. And then again, we already kind of touched on it, but Lu Cheng, I thought that was really interesting that you brought this new format to Table Topics. I think for someone like me who's new, or who I consider myself an introvert, if someone asks me to tell a story, I get blank. But now that I have this framework, this is actually something that any of us can kind of use in our mind, not when we're talking about anything. So thank you for that. I think that's something that we can all take. And again, I think everyone rolled with the punches really well. for those of us that have never seen this before, everyone tried it out. I think everyone gave it the college try, and that was something that I think you should all be proud of. So I think that's my general evaluation. I'll pass it back to Erin.
Thank you, Christine. That was an excellent evaluation, especially all the nice things you said about me.
You're welcome.
So we're going to wrap things up. Before we do, a couple of things to think about as we're going forward. First of all, I just wanted to acknowledge our guest who's here from another club. Would you mind just sort of introducing yourself and saying what club you're from?
Sure, I'm from, should I say that? Hi, I'm Angie, and I'm from Rhino Business Club and Sierra Speakers. I met Tony and Lou Ching at the area contest in which they both won first place, so they did very well. And I'm glad to visit. Yeah, I've heard great things, and I'm glad Tony gave me the opportunity to come check you guys out.
And what is the Rhino Club, and when and where?
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Please come visit. We meet over on Mission at the Chase Building on Tuesday nights at 6:20, and we also serve dinner. So please come. Yeah.
Every Tuesday?
Every Tuesday.
Dinner's every Tuesday.
Thank you. You're welcome. The other thing that we should all be thinking about it a little bit is the officer elections are coming up fairly soon. I think they're coming up in the end of May. Yes, the end of this month. So if you are interested in participating in the club leadership and you want to understand what any individual rule does, I would recommend reaching out to the person who holds that role now, or just looking online. The Toastmasters website really does have a lot of great resources. It talks a lot about what the individual roles do. It's a really rewarding experience, and you get to kind of be in the inner workings where the gears are, and that's always kind of fun. So with that said, there's really nothing else that I had on my agenda. I usually end my team meetings that way. Some people say it's kind of an awkward way to close things out, but hey, if you don't have anything else on your agenda, you don't have anything else on your agenda. So thank you for being here tonight. Again, appreciate that everyone showed up, and I think this was a very successful meeting. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And if you want to pass your evaluation forms over to Tony.
Okay.